As Alex West stood alone before the Galactic Council, heart pounding beneath his thin diplomatic suit, he was acutely aware of the disdainful gazes around him. The council hall loomed large, its high-arched ceiling glowing with ethereal beams as rows of crystalline alien representatives regarded him with a mixture of mockery and contempt. Though the stares were intense, Alex kept his focus. He hadn't come here for their approval. He was here to deliver a warning. A red hologram flickered ominously, counting down, a final testament to Earth's dwindling patience. Only minutes remained, and though laughter rippled through the council chamber, low and mocking, Alex's gaze stayed steely. They might dismiss him now, but they didn't understand Earth. Humanity's resilience, born out of necessity, wasn't something they could easily comprehend. He raised his voice. The patience of Earth is not infinite. This countdown is no plea for mercy. It's a warning. A towering figure, Commander Delina, sneered from across the chamber. Her jaw pulsed in what might have been laughter. Shielding yourself with rocks and sticks, she taunted, eyes gleaming with disdain. Fury flared within Alex, but he kept his voice calm. You underestimate us, Commander. Earth has developed its own defenses. You do well to heed our warnings. His words echoed, and for a moment, silence held in the vast hall. Then, Delina's voice cut through the stillness. The Council has deemed it necessary to integrate Earth into our empire. Surrender or submit. Her confidence was palpable. She smirked, as if humanity's resistance was nothing more than a trivial obstacle. Our fleet is already en route to Earth. Whatever defenses you've cobbled together, they're meaningless. You'll soon learn your place in this galaxy. Alex clenched his fists. If this was their final decision, then Earth would have no choice. Remember this moment, he replied, his tone firm. When you see what humanity is capable of. As the red countdown in the hologram drew closer to zero, Alex held Delina's gaze. Commander, you're making a grave mistake, he said steadily. The countdown ticked down to the last seconds. Delina's smug expression barely faltered as she turned back to the bridge of her flagship, the Aurora. Status report, she commanded, amusement tinging her tone. She could almost see the human diplomat's face when he realized Earth's defiance was futile. Then, a flicker on her screen caught her attention, a faint but persistent reading. Lieutenant, explain this anomaly, she ordered, a hint of irritation in her voice. The officer, pale in the sterile light of the command center, stammered. It seems to be gravitational interference, Commander. It's disrupting our forward shields and communications arrays. A sliver of doubt crept into Delina's confidence as she scrutinized the data, her unease growing. The disturbance wasn't a mere glitch. It cascaded through their systems like a silent wave, turning indicator lights from green to amber to red. She barked, Lieutenant, what are we looking at? The officer's voice trembled. Commander, it's destabilizing our fleet at a molecular level. The gravity field was relentless, and as the deck beneath her feet hummed ominously, Delina's composure slipped. Retreat the fleet, she ordered, voice taut. The bridge filled with flashing red lights and urgent commands as her officers scrambled to comply. Through the viewport, Delina could see the lead Vanguard ship buckling, its hull shimmering as it folded inward, imploding in a flash of light, leaving only silence and scattered debris. Alex's warning echoed in her mind, his words hitting harder now. The humans had achieved the impossible, creating a weapon that bypassed their defenses with chilling efficiency. She swallowed, her gaze hardening on the view screen. Was it possible that a desperate, primitive species had developed a weapon capable of toppling the Galactic Council's finest? Her fleet was unraveling before her, ships crushed by Earth's gravitational weapon. Desperation colored her voice as she ordered retreat, her hands white-knuckled on the armrests. Ship after ship collapsed, disintegrating under the relentless gravity field as the humans' weapons tore through their formations. Alex's steely voice rang out one last time. We warned you. Her hands trembled, fingers hovering over the controls, but she willed them to stay. Steady panic was for those with options, and she had none to report. Her voice cut through the chaos. barely concealing the edge of dread. Lieutenant GR turned to face her, his expression grim. "We've lost all forward vessels, Commander. Our system's there, failing to counter the gravitational interference. It's spreading faster than we can retreat." She clenched her jaw, mind racing. She was supposed to be untouchable, her fleet an unstoppable symbol of the Council's dominance. Yet here they were reduced to ruins by a planet. They weren't deemed worthy of serious consideration. The human diplomat's face flickered across her mind, his calm warning echoing in her ears. "We warned you to shift all power to propulsion and get us out of the field's range." She ordered, her voice, though steady, carried the weight of her desperation. "If we can clear the interference, we may still be able to regroup." A murmur of acknowledgement swept through the bridge as officers scrambled to comply. The Aurora lurched forward, engines straining against the field. Invisible grip outside, Drina could see the scattered remains of the fleet twisting, pulled in different directions by the disruption field, their metallic hulls groaning under the pressure for the first time in her career. She felt the chill of helplessness. The screen before her flickered, and Alex Carter's face reappeared, calm as ever, the nerve of him to remain so collected while her fleet crumbled. She glared at the image, a surge of anger flaring within her. "Is this your idea of diplomacy, human?" she snarled, her voice tinged with bitterness. "You call this peace, Alex?" Didn't flinch. His gaze held hers, steady and unyielding. "We asked for peace," he replied softly, his voice devoid of malice. "You chose war." Earth only responded in kind. Drina swallowed, hating the unfamiliar weight of defeat pressing down on her. "You think this victory will make your species safe? The Council will retaliate. This technology of yours won't protect you forever." "Perhaps not," Alex admitted, his voice steady, "but we've made it clear that Earth won't bow to threats. If the Council comes again, we'll be ready to defend ourselves once more. All we ask is to be left alone." His words hit harder than she expected. He wasn't gloating. He wasn't reveling in their victory. He was simply stating facts, his calm conviction unwavering, and for the first time, Drina found herself questioning the righteousness of the Council's crusade. Had they been too quick to assume superiority, too eager to subdue, rather than understand? She forced herself to straighten, clinging to the last vestiges of her authority. "If you believe this will end here, you're mistaken. The Council doesn't forgive insubordination." Alex's gaze softened, though his resolve remained. "Then we'll defend ourselves as long as necessary, but know this, Commander, Earth isn't asking for power or dominion. All we seek is freedom." A silence stretched between them, heavy with the unspoken truths that lay beneath their words' minds swirled with doubt. Her certainty was eroded by the unyielding reality that Earth had indeed forced their hand. Her pride screamed at her to argue, to assert the Council's dominance, but another part, a quieter, deeper part, recognized the futility of it. Earth had proven itself not as a conqueror, but as a resilient force that wouldn't be crushed. The ship's sensors jolted her from her thoughts. Commander GR called, his voice laced with alarm. "We're nearing the edge of the disruption field, but our propulsion is fluctuating. We might not make it out intact." She clenched her fists, teeth grinding. If they failed to escape the field, the Council would lose not only a fleet, but its finest commander. The humiliation would be unbearable, and worse still, it would embolden Earth and other so-called lesser species. This could trigger an upheaval across Council-held territories and divert all remaining power to shields and engines. She barked, her tone. "Broking no argument gets us through." Lieutenant Aurora surged forward with a final, desperate burst of speed. The hull vibrated violently, groaning under the strain as the gravitational waves clawed at the ship, trying to tear it apart. Every creak, every shudder seemed to echo her own fears. Yet she held her gaze on the distant stars, willing them to grow closer. Alex's image lingered on her screen, his eyes, calm and unrelenting. "This is your chance to leave peacefully, Commander. Take it before more lives are lost." For a fleeting moment, Drina wanted to respond, to tell him that perhaps they would consider his terms, that this bloodshed wasn't necessary, but her pride held her back, binding her to the silence. The Aurora broke, free of the field's grip, its engines roaring as it propelled them into safe space. Drina released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding yet. The relief was hollow-tainted by the knowledge of the fleet she'd left behind. As the Aurora stabilized, beyond the reach of Earth's disruption field, the battered crew on the bridge began to regroup, casting furtive glances at Commander Drina. The silence was thick, a palpable weight pressing down on each of them. Drina sat motionless, in her command chair, her gaze fixed on the debris, strewn an expanse of space that had once been her fleet. The hum of the ship's systems was all that filled the void, but it did nothing to drown the bitter truth. Echoing in her mind, she had underestimated them. She had underestimated Earth. The comm console beeped, shattering the silence, and a fresh message from the Council command appeared on the screen. Drina hesitated before accepting and bracing herself for the inevitable reprimand. The holographic figure of the High Counselor materialized, his reptilian eyes narrowed with barely concealed fury. Commander Drina Varric began, his voice as cold as interstellar ice. Your failure to subdue a lesser species has cost us dearly. Do you grasp the severity of this disgrace? Her pride flared at the accusation, but she swallowed her retort, bowing her head. Instead, I understand my Counselor Earth's defenses. They were beyond anything we anticipated in their disruption. Technology bypassed our shields. Our ships disassembled under its power. Vic's expression darkened further. And yet you still speak as though it were an accident, as though Earth could have achieved this without planning. They are clearly more dangerous than we believed, and now they are emboldened by your failure. Dren's jaw tightened, and she forced herself to respond calmly. Perhaps, High Counselor, we should reconsider our approach. Earth does not seek conquest or territory. They have asked only for peace and independence. Another attempt to subjugate them may only end in further loss. Vic's eyes narrowed, his forked tongue flicking in distaste. You suggest we negotiate with those who defied us, Commander. The Council does not negotiate with primitives. A flicker of frustration ignited in her chest, but she held it back. High Counselor, these primitives have proven they can dismantle our fleet. A show of force may only deepen their resolve. They are not interested in conquest. They merely wish to be left alone. V's gaze hardened clearly, unimpressed by her plea. And you believe surrendering to this rebellion will not inspire others to follow suit. One spark of defiance could spread to every corner of our territories. We cannot allow such weakness. The transmission ended abruptly, and Drina's shoulders slumped. V's refusal to recognize Earth's strength, to see them as anything more than pests, filled her with a hollow dread. She understood now that the Council's pride would doom them to repeat this mistake, to drive Earth and perhaps others to defend their autonomy at any cost. A soft chime broke her and Alex Carter's image reappeared on the screen. His calm, steady gaze met hers, and for the first time, she felt a flicker of respect rather than disdain. Commander Alex began, his tone gentle but firm. I don't need to know what your council has told you, but Earth's position remains unchanged. We seek no war with you or anyone else, but we will not yield. Drina took a deep breath, the weight of her failure settling into a grim acceptance. You've proven yourself a formidable adversary, Carter. She admitted, her tone devoid of the condescension that had laced their earlier exchanges. Your people have shown strength. I did not expect. I underestimated you. Alex's gaze softened, and he nodded in acknowledgement. Our strength isn't in our technology, Commander. It's in our resolve to protect our own Earth that we have learned the cost of freedom, and we won't surrender it. The word struck a chord she hadn't anticipated. She saw in his eyes not the gloating of a victory, but the quiet determination of someone who would rather avoid bloodshed than revel in it. Her own pride seemed insignificant in the face of his conviction. Perhaps one day the Council will understand that, she replied with her voice, a murmur more to herself than to him. Perhaps this conflict can end without further loss. The faintest hint of a smile appeared on Alex's face, though his tone remained serious. That's our hope, and we'll be ready. Should that day come. The transmission ended, leaving Drina alone with her thoughts. The bridge crew waited in silence, watching as she straightened her mind, churning with an unfamiliar mixture of regret and respect. She rose from her chair, her gaze sweeping over her crew, and the weight of responsibility settled heavily on her shoulders, preparing for departure. She ordered, her voice steadier. Then she felt we returned to the council and prepared for whatever may come as the Aurora turned away from Earth. Her thoughts drifted to the planet that had humbled her, a place she dismissed as primitive but had found itself woven into her memory. Earth had defied her, not with malice or arrogance, but with an unyielding will to survive. In that moment, she understood the strength that lay within their fragile, determined species. A final glance at the blue orb on the view screen filled her with a quiet resolve. She would return to the council bearing not only the scars of defeat, but a warning one. They could choose to ignore their peril,